Welcome back, everybody. This is the follow-up to our PTO clutch rewind on our Raider 10 wheel horse. So we rewound this clutch here, and we're going to show it operating this 42-inch side discharge deck, just to show you proof of concept and proof of the repair. So let's give it a shot. We did some tuning and adjustment on the engine before shooting this video too that will not be shown, but we've got the RPM set for about 3,600 wide open, no load. So now the deck's moving at about the right speed. It was way too slow before. I think that engine was probably running 2,400 RPM, something like that, most of its life. So that might be why it's a little burned out too. It wasn't getting cooled enough. All right, we're gonna do a couple passes out this way and show you how it's done. That's the deck cutting on its highest setting. And I measured the tips of the blades, and it's about 2.5 inches at its highest setting. So it doesn't mow very high, but that's probably because there's a lot of wear in here. But it does produce a pretty decent cut for an old machine, huh? Haven't done anything with the blades. We've done some work to the deck belts, put a new deck belt on it. Put a good used one on here. Shut it off so we can hear. Yeah, and then the deck is starting to fall apart here. You can actually see where this had been welded before, and on our first test run it was doing all right, and then the deck just started vibrating like crazy, and I found that spindle was basically just trying to vibrate through the hole. So put some boogers on there real quick just to hold it in. That'll have to be kind of plated in properly. Yeah, we put a new PTO belt on it. This is a 69-inch half-inch belt, air mid-cord. That's a rotary belt there. You can see, you know, the final install on the clutch is nice. We've got no tension on the wiring here. This is kind of neat. They've got little insulators. This is not metal right here. That's actually like a little plastic bushing. So we were able to save those little bushings there. That looks pretty nice, huh? Yeah. I tell you what, it actually mows all right. We had some problems with the deck lift system. So there's just a bunch of stuff in this thing. I guess let's start over here. So starting over here, the lift rod was coming out of the hole there completely. I don't know if you can see that cotter pin right there. That wasn't there at all, and so the lift rod was just falling out of the lift arm. Someone had put a little spring in there, like a coiled up spring to shove through the hole. So that was no good. And then the deck was sitting way higher in the rear than it was the front. And found that this rod here didn't have a pin on the opposite side, so we put a pin on that. And then I believe this was actually installed improperly. I think this whole rod assembly was up on top of that arm, and this arm right here. And I think it's been like that for a while. I'm not a wheel horse nut, so I don't know exactly how all these lift mechanisms and stuff work. I'm still kind of learning. That's something I probably would have seen immediately or known immediately if I was familiar. This guy here was seized up, so this is the tensioner for the deck. And it was seized up. These, I think, are supposed to be nylocks here. And I'm out of nylocks right now, so what I did is I loosened these up enough to get this to move, lubricated it a little bit, and I know it shouldn't have lubrication, it should be dry, but, you know, rather than pulling the deck and actually doing the proper fix just for now, I loosened them up just enough to get it to move, and then put a jam nut on top, so, and, you know, they're not actually loose or anything like that, but there's a carriage bolt basically right there, and I don't want the carriage bolt just flopping around, so simulated some nylocks there, got this guy freed up so the deck belt's doing a thing. The belt that was on it took a pooch and self-ejected, so we had an 86-inch half-inch belt laying around here from one of the Cubs. Same size deck belt that the 50-inch deck on the Cubs uses, so that's kind of handy. I've got an 86 there. Lubricated a bunch of stuff here, spindles, all took grease. This one we're gonna get new seals and probably new bearings for all of them, but this one here pooches its grease out the top. None of the other ones do, they all come out the bottom. So I think the seal for this bearing is pooched. Over here on the rusty side of the deck, our grease fitting here will take grease, but the problem is, sorry about that, the problem is that this grease fitting is a tube that goes into that. Oh, you're not going to see it very well, are you?
block the light. Yeah, there you go. So there's a tube that connects that grease fitting to the spindle, and the grease just comes out of a pinhole leak in the side of that tube. So you kind of got to like hold your finger over the hole while you're adding grease in to make sure it gets grease out the spindles. But everybody took grease. And they don't have a lot of play or anything. They actually look all right. The roller up here is just completely pooched. The deck sits a little lower on this side than it does the other side. These guys are pooched, I believe, on both sides. The other one's completely missing. This one's still intact, that little nylon piece there. These guys take grease, but they're, you know, wobbly and stuff. But, you know, it does mow. And look at that. Look what she did. Huh? Not bad for 54 years old, huh? So, lots of deck work still to do. We're going to replace upper and lower bearings. These have like a roller bearing in the top and a needle bearing in the bottom. And then they've got a sealed bearing in the top, so there's an upper lip to the bearing here, or an upper seal to the bearing here. And then the bottom one is a needle bearing that slides up in, and then there's a separate seal for the bottom. So new bearings and seals for the spindles. Going to get some new bearings for the mule drive here. They're not terrible, but you know, these are all original components basically, so there's a little bit of play in everything. And then the tensioner pulley there, we're going to replace that guy. Bearings are pretty shot in that dude. Yeah, but right now it's a functional deck, and that's all that really matters. The bigger issue, and we're going to get to that in the next video, is what to do about this Tecumseh. So I had thought about rebuilding it, and I'm not necessarily opposed to rebuilding it, but we do have some engines here that I think, well, first of all, they need used. They're just sitting here. And second of all, I think would be like a little bit of an upgrade, but not so much that it's going to completely change the feel of the machine. It's still a single cylinder, same ignition system, same kind of fuel system, all that stuff. And we'll get into that in the next video. But this guy's a smoker and I got a little bit of piston knock, so I don't want to, we're on borrowed time with that engine. So anyway, that's it. She's running, driving, and mowing now, charging well, and I think this is going to wrap up this video. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll be back with some engine swappy stuff. Engine swappy stuff, reseal the rear end, completely go over the deck, probably paint the wheels. I'm not going to paint the tins at all. We'll just wipe those down with some Scotch-Brite and some oil and leave it alone. So thanks for sticking around, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.